The message to look through that one data point, I mean, does that sort of discount the data that we're going to get in the weeks leading up to this next Fed meeting?
They're leaning so far forward toward easing, it's hard to imagine a data point that would pull them back. They were close at the June meeting. He was far forward in the press conference. They confirmed it in the minutes and in his testimony. In some sense, you should listen to what he didn't say. And what he didn't say at all is push back against the expectation of easing. Having decided not to do that, it meant he was accepting. In that case, silence implies consent.
Sheila, what did you make of the testimony yesterday, and what do you think the Fed chair might have left out?
Well, I do think he really emphasized the weaknesses and kind of glossed over the strengths. So I agree it was highly dovish. I think he's locked himself into at least a 25 basis point cut. And I'm not sure why. I think, they raised in December when they should have hit pause, and now it seems like they're going the opposite direction. But one good part about this, politically, it was a masterful performance, and nobody will suspect that he's doing this to help the Trump administration, given all the Trump bashing of Jerome Powell. So at least we can be confident that whatever decisions they're making, they're doing based on what they think is good for the economy. I'm not sure this is good for the economy, but I have no doubt that's what's driving their motivation.
You said you weren't really sure of why he would lock himself in to this extent. I mean, do you think that he's seeing cross currents that are maybe even worse than he's letting on?
Maybe he's seeing something that we're not seeing. But it was a very strong jobs report. I'm very optimistic. We have a truce now with China. Hopefully get a trade agreement there. But I guess the whole premise that we use low interest rates to drive the economy, we've been doing that for a decade now. They're talking about going back to the mid-'90s playbook, where Alan Greenspan, for about 12, 13 years, was able to manage, mute the cycles with aggressive interest rate policy, though it was still over 5% back then. But a lot of people think that's what led to the excesses that eventually led to the tech bubble burst, and then, of course, the subprime crisis. So there are downsides to financial stability by doing this, and he really didn't mention that at all, and I found that disappointing.
And Vince, where does this rate cut fit in to where the cycle is globally? It's in manufacturing slowdown, clearly. Most of the weaknesses in overseas economies. We have this anomaly where short-term U.S. rates are kind of high across the rest of the world. But is this really a response to a genuine threat to the economic expansion?
A lot of confusion here, including 75 basis points of ease as priced into markets is not buying insurance. That's a panicked response to economic weakness. But when you look around, it's hard to see that sort of weakness in the U.S. economy. So more than anything, I think you're right. The Fed feels uncomfortable sticking out among the community of advanced economy central banks. And that pressure on the dollar, the force of low rates, $13 trillion worth of sovereign debt and negative yields around the world, that's leading them to want to get into better alignment.
Steve, you want to jump in?
One point to Sheila. Sheila's point about what the chair didn't also say, there was no admission of guilt. Everything was late-breaking developments that said, here's this new risk to the global outlook or risk on trade. There was no sense that, gee, maybe that last move in December was a little too much, or maybe we haven't gotten the inflation we expected that led us to this tightening, and we're correcting that. And the problem is, if you don't admit that, then you're probably not acknowledging it in your own discussions.
Steve?
I was just going to ask Sheila. I think Sheila Bair probably dealt with the Federal Reserve at the FDIC more than any other chairman because she was with them lockstep during the crisis and working on policy. Sheila, you remember there was a dynamic on the Federal Reserve. You had your hawks that kind of limited how far you'd go, and you had your doves that were like, let's go all the way, and there was this. And as a reporter, you'd cover that dynamic. I'm missing that dynamic here. When you look at the Federal Reserve now, do you see the same old idea that there were some people that are saying, let's not go that far, and some people saying, let's go all the way here? Or is it just like everybody says, let's cut, we're all on board?
Yeah, it seems to be a unified front at this point. And so, you know, and I think there again, I do think there's some dynamic with the president, unfortunately, bashing the Fed and bashing Chairman Powell personally. I think there's some closing the ranks there, too, which my guess is feeding into that unanimity. So, no, I don't sense any of the kind of more robust discussions we were seeing previously. Now, you are seeing that on the supervisory side. They're still easing on the supervisory side, too, which worries me. And there, Lael Brainerd has been public and dissenting from some of
So
them.
are you more in the Lael Brainerd camp on that or more in the Randy Quarles camp? I'm going to talk to Randy later today.
Yeah. So, look, I know Randy well. I served with him in the Bush Treasury Department. I have tremendous respect for him. But no, I am more in the Lael camp. I think they're, especially if they're going to keep this party going, you know, with the asset bubbles this, you know, highly accommodative monetary policy creates, they need to be tightening, not loosening on supervisory policy, and they're not. Leverage loans, a lot of conversation about that. Still worrying about it, but not doing a lot about it. No countercyclical capital buffers. There are a lot of things they could do that they're not doing right now. And so actually, I think Lael is right on that.